Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're taking a close look at the global market for life sciences analytical regions.
Right.
We've got this really interesting recent report, the Global Life Sciences Regions Analytical Regions Market Report 2025.
Mm,
And our goal today is really to dig into the key insights, what these numbers actually tell us about health and scientific research.
exactly. Think of it as kind of getting up to speed on a sector that's, well, vital. It underpins so much what goes on in labs, in developing new treatments.
Yeah.
We want to go beyond just the raw figures and really explore the trends underneath and, why they matter to you.
Absolutely. And just to kick us off, there was one statistic that really jumped out.
Oh, yeah.
The global market for these reagents, it's projected to hit USD 72.98 billion in 2025.
Wow. Okay.
But looking out to 2033, that figure is expected to climb to USD 117.2 billion.
That's quite elite.
It is. That's a compound annual growth rate, the CAGR, of 6.10%. So we're not just talking small steps here. This is like significant expansion
Yeah, a really strong signal.
in a field that's directly tied to our health and, well, the future of discovery. Okay, let's start to unpack this. What are the main things driving this kind of growth?
What's fascinating, and the report really highlights this, is it's kind of a convergence of a few key things. The biggest one, probably increasing investments in life sciences R&D.
Right, makes sense.
Think about all the effort globally, understanding diseases, creating therapies. All that relies heavily on sophisticated analysis.
And the reagents are the fuel for that analysis.
Exactly. They make it possible. But there's more to it.
Okay.
If you connect it to the bigger picture, we're also seeing this rising demand for precision medicine.
Personalized healthcare?
Personalized healthcare, exactly. Tailoring treatments to individuals down to the molecular level.
Yeah.
That needs incredibly detailed analysis.
Which means more demand for advanced reagents.
Precisely. And the report also points to another big factor, the growing use of high-throughput screening and automation in labs.
Ah, the robotics.
Yeah, basically systems that let labs process tons of samples really fast. More efficiency, but also, you guessed it, more demand for compatible reagents.
Okay, so more research, more targeted treatments, more efficient labs. It all adds up to needing more of these essential tools. But is anything acting as a brake? Any challenges slowing this down?
That's a really important point. Growth isn't always smooth, right?
Right.
The report does identify the high cost associated with some of these, really advanced reagents and the specialized instruments they need. That's a barrier.
Cutting edge science isn't cheap.
Definitely not. And then there are the regulatory hurdles, strict frameworks, compliance that can sometimes slow down how quickly new reagents and tech get adopted.
So innovation has to navigate costs and regulations.
Okay.
Looking ahead then, what are some key trends shaping where this market is going?
We're seeing a couple of really interesting shifts. One is this clear move towards sustainable and eco-friendly reagents.
The green chemistry angle?
Exactly. There's growing awareness about the environmental footprint of labs, and the industry is responding, developing greener alternatives.
That's good to hear. What else?
The other big one is the increasing integration of AI.
Artificial intelligence. In regions.
Well, more in the workflows that use the reagents, AI helping to optimize experiments, analyze really complex data, maybe even assist in designing new regions down the line.
Huh. AI really is getting everywhere. Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Let's talk geography. How does this market look across different parts of the world?
Right, the regional breakdown is quite telling. Globally, North America is currently the largest slice of the pie.
Okay.
For 2025, it's expected to account for about 37%, which translates to around 27 billion US dollars.
So the biggest market right now.
Yeah, but interestingly, its projected growth rate, the TAGR, is about 4.6% through 2033. Solid, but maybe more moderate compared to other places we'll talk about.
Got it. And within North America?
The U.S. is definitely the dominant force. We're talking USD 21.31 billion in 2025 with a 4.4% CAGR. That's driven by significant government research funding and just the sheer number of major companies based there.
Right.
Canada's looking at about 3.24 billion, but with a slightly higher growth rate, 5.4%, boosted by investments in genomics and biotech.
Okay.
And Mexico, projected around 2.46 billion with 5.1% growth, is seeing expansion partly due to its growing pharma manufacturing sector.
So North America leads now, but maybe not the fastest growing.
That seems to be the picture, yeah. Steady leadership for now.
Okay, so if North America is the current heavyweight, you mentioned others might be growing faster. What
Well,
about Europe?
Europe is number two, holding about 29% of the market share in 2025. That's roughly $21.16 billion.
And its growth.
Projected CAGR is a bit higher than North America's at 5.2%.
Okay.
Within Europe, you've got some key players. The UK has a really strong research ecosystem, pushing its growth to an expected 6.0% CAGR, hitting about $3.56 billion in 2025.
Strong growth there.
Definitely. Germany's another big one, a major hub for biotech and pharma, looking at about $4.19 billion with 5.4% growth.
Makes sense.
Then you have France, Italy, Russia, Spain, all significant markets contributing. What's also interesting is seeing solid growth, like in the 5% range, from smaller countries too, like Sweden and Denmark. Even Luxembourg is showing 5.5%.
So it's quite distributed across Europe.
It really is. It highlights a diverse and pretty innovative landscape there.
Interesting. Now let's turn to the region everyone seems to be watching for rapid expansion, Asia Pacific.
Ah, yes, APAC. Okay, so currently for 2025, it holds about 24% market share. That's valued at $17.52 billion
Okay, so smaller than Europe for now.
for now. But here's the kicker. The projected CGR for APAC is 8.8% between 2025 and 2033.
Wow, 8.8%. That's significantly higher.
It really is. That's the highest growth rate globally. And China's a huge part of that story.
I bet.
Projected at $7.36 billion in 2025, growing at 8.3%. You've got this booming biotech startup scene, lots of government R&D support, and a big focus on precision medicine. And then there's India, another major growth engine, expected to reach $1.75 billion, but with an incredible 10.7% CAGR.
Over 10%. What's driving that?
Things like pharma outsourcing, growth in molecular diagnostics, healthcare reforms. It's a combination.
Got it.
And it's not just China and India. Southeast Asia as a whole is showing strong potential, around 9.6% growth. Even the more established markets like Singapore, Taiwan, Australia, South Korea, Japan, they're still showing really healthy growth, mostly in the 7 to 9% range.
So across the board, APAC is just accelerating.
Absolutely. It really underlines how dynamic the life sciences sector is becoming in Asia. This kind of growth suggests a pretty significant shift in the global landscape is underway.
Definitely a key trend to keep an eye on. Okay, what about the other regions? South America, the Middle East, Africa.
Right, let's round those out. South America holds about 4% market share for 2025. That's around $2.77 billion. Projected growth is solid, 6.8% CAGR.
And within South America?
Brazil is the largest market there. Expected to be about $1.119 billion, growing at 7.4%. That's driven by healthcare investments and dealing with infectious diseases, diagnostic needs. Argentina, Chile, Peru are also showing strong growth potential, actually above 7% in some cases.
Okay, Middle East.
Also around 4% share, slightly larger value at $2.92 billion. And its growth is projected even higher at 7.4% CAGR.
Interesting. Where's that growth coming from?
Saudi Arabia is key, hitting about $1.03 billion with 7.7% growth, partly thanks to their Vision 2030 push into biotech research. The UAE and Turkey are also showing really robust growth, close to 8%.
And Africa?
Africa currently has the smallest share, about 2.2%, which is roughly $1.61 billion in 2025. But still, it's projected to grow at a respectable 6.4% CAGR.
Okay.
South Africa is the main market there, around $0.57 billion, growing at 7.3%, driven by disease diagnostics and research collaborations. Nigeria is also showing decent growth.
So while North America and Europe are the big players now, the future seems much more globally diverse, with APAC really leading the charge on growth.
That's definitely what the numbers suggest, yeah.
Yes.
A shifting balance.
Okay, let's switch focus now from where to what. What kinds of reagents are actually most in demand? How does the market break down by product type?
Good question. According to the report, the chromatography segment is currently dominant.
Chromatography. Remind us briefly.
Sure. It's basically a set of techniques used to separate and analyze mixtures. Really fundamental stuff in pharma, biotech, food safety testing.
Right, separating components.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Crucial for things like purifying drugs during development, checking food quality. And with increasing regulatory focus on thorough testing, its leading position makes sense.
Okay, so chromatography is the workhorse. But you mentioned growth earlier. Did the report highlight a segment that's growing particularly fast?
It did, yes. The molecular category. That's identified as the fastest growing product segment.
Molecular, so we're talking DNA, RNA, that sort of thing.
Precisely. This growth is really fueled by the increasing use of molecular techniques in genetic testing, personalized medicine, developing biopharmaceuticals.
The cutting edge stuff.
Yeah, largely. Think about technologies like next-generation sequencing, NGS for mapping genes quickly, or PCR-based diagnostics for detecting diseases, especially in cancer research and infectious diseases. The adoption there is just booming.
That fits with the overall trend towards more targeted medicine we discussed earlier. Makes sense. Okay, what about applications? Where are these reagents primarily being used?
The biggest user segment right now is hospitals and diagnostic labs.
Okay, that seems logical.
Yeah, it's driven by the constant high demand for reagents in diagnosing diseases, running routine clinical chemistry tests, all the essential lab work.
Day-to-day healthcare diagnostics.
Exactly. Plus, you have the global rise in chronic diseases like diabetes, heart disease, and also infectious diseases. Combine that with better diagnostic tech, and you see why hospitals and labs need so many reagents. Growing healthcare infrastructure worldwide also feeds into this.
So the front line of healthcare is the major consumer. But just like with products, is there an application area showing particularly fast growth?
Yes, there is. The report points to contract research organizations, or CROs.
CROs. Remind us what they do.
They're companies that provide outsourced research services, mainly to the pharmaceutical and biotech industries.
Outsourcing R&D.
Right. And that trend is really picking up. Pharma and biotech companies are increasingly outsourcing their analytical testing and parts of drug development to CROs.
Why is that? Cost.
Cost is a big part of it, yeah. CROs can often offer more cost-effective and efficient solutions. It lets the pharma companies focus on their core business. Plus, with more complex biopharmaceutical R&D and strict regulatory demands for validation, the need for the specialized testing CROs offer is growing fast.
So outsourcing is boosting reagent demand within these CROs specifically. Interesting. Okay, this is clearly a substantial market, lots of growth. Who are the main companies competing in this space? It sounds pretty competitive.
Oh, it's definitely highly competitive. The report lists several key players. The big names, Thermo Fisher Scientific, Merck KGaA, Danaher, Agilent Technologies, Bio-Rad Laboratories, PerkinElmer, Waters Corporation, BED, Becton Dickinson, Roche Diagnostics, Siemens Health and Heirs, Lonza, QAGN, Abbott, Sysmex, Bruker Corporation. It's a significant list.
Yeah, some major players there. What are they focusing on to stay competitive? It sounds like just having reagents isn't enough.
Not at all. They're constantly focused on innovation. Improving sensitivity, detecting smaller amounts, specificity targeting only the right substance, and stability making sure the reagents perform consistently over time. That's crucial for their customers in pharma, biotech, clinical research.
So continuous improvement is key. What other strategies are they using?
Well, their approach is pretty multifaceted. As we mentioned, there's that growing emphasis on sustainable, eco-friendly options. That's becoming a differentiator.
Right.
Making sure their reagents work seamlessly with lab automation is another huge priority.
Compatibility.
Exactly. And as we touched on, integrating AI into their products and services is becoming more important. Beyond just the products, they're also forming strategic collaborations, partnering with research institutes, diagnostic labs, CROs to offer more tailored solutions and expand their reach.
So it's about building an ecosystem, not just selling products, providing integrated solutions. The report had some specific examples of this, didn't it?
It did, yeah. Good examples of these strategies in action. Like in November 2024, Agilent launched a new kit, the MitoRCR assay kit.
What does that do?
It basically simplifies how researchers measure mitochondrial function, the energy production in cells using standard lab equipment, makes that kind of research easier.
More accessible. Okay.
Then in June 2023, Merck announced a big investment, over $73 million, to expand its production of high-purity reagents in Nantong, China.
Directly targeting that APAC growth we talked about.
Exactly.
Okay.
And one more. In February 2023, Cytek Biosciences partnered with Bio-Rad. They integrated Bio-Rad's special dyes, StarBright dyes, into Cytek's flow cytometry platform that's a tool for analyzing cells. This collaboration enhances what researchers can do in complex cell analysis.
Those examples really do illustrate the innovation and the strategic moves happening. Okay, let's try and pull this all together. What are the main takeaways from this deep dive into the life sciences analytical reagents market?
Okay, summarizing. We're looking at a market that's definitely set for significant global growth.
Driven mainly by R&D investment and healthcare advances.
Right. While North America and Europe are the current leaders in market share, Asia-Pacific is where the fastest growth is happening, presenting huge future opportunities.
And product-wise?
Chromatography is dominant, but molecular reagents are the fastest growing segment.
Applications.
Hospitals and diagnostic labs are the biggest users currently, But CROs are the fastest growing application area due to outsourcing trends.
And the companies involved.
It's a competitive landscape driven by continuous innovation, a focus on sustainability and automation, and strategic partnerships being key.
So a really dynamic, expanding market, lots of interconnected parts, all pointing towards faster science and better healthcare down the line. It really highlights how vital this sector is.
It really does. And, it makes you wonder, given all this rapid advancement and investment, how will these trends ultimately shape the speed and the effectiveness of scientific discovery and healthcare delivery in the next decade?
Yeah.
And what new applications for these reagents might pop up that we haven't even thought of yet?
Definitely something fascinating to watch unfold.